Coming up next on I've Got Issues, find out how Kansas families are faring in the ongoing war on poverty. Stay tuned.
This program is brought to you by the Friends of KTWU.
Welcome to I've Got Issues. I'm Janet Thompson-Jackson. As our nation continues to grapple with a sluggish economy, many of us are faced with challenging situations related to our own finances. For some families, it's more challenging than others. On this show, we'll explore some of the resources available to those in need of assistance. It's been 50 years since President Johnson focused attention on the plight of the less fortunate among us as he declared a war on poverty.
Poverty is a national problem requiring improved national organization and support. But this attack, to be effective, must also be organized at the state and the local level and must be supported and directed by state and local efforts. For the war against poverty will not be won here in Washington. It must be won in the field, in every private home, in every public office, from the courthouse to the White House.
We're joined now by two senior administrators with a nonprofit organization called Housing and Credit Counseling Incorporated, which serves northeastern Kansas with offices in Topeka, Lawrence, and Manhattan. Marilyn Stanley is Chief Operating Officer for the organization, and Bob Mackey is President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome, Bob and Marilyn.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. So, Francine and Jim Bostic were $118,000 in debt, and HCCI, Housing and Credit Counseling, helped them to get out of it. How did you do that?
Well, first of all, they are in the Manhattan area, and so they worked with our counselors in the Manhattan office about 6 years ago or so now. And they came to the counselor and talked about their issues and did say that they had $118,000, most of which was credit card debt. Wow. They had 13 credit cards, all maxed out. Interestingly enough, they had both had good jobs at Kansas State University, kind of middle management jobs, and it just got away from them. And
and this happened over the course of many years.
A series of years, yes. And so they finally heard about housing and credit counseling, came to our office. Our counselor provided them different options, one of which was filing bankruptcy, of course. If you know Fran and Jim, they're from the old school, and they said, you know, we made these debts, we're going to pay them off. And that's very refreshing. You don't hear that much anymore. So with a debt management plan that we set up for them, and also Fran and Jim getting extra jobs, they managed to pay off all of their debt in a matter of 5.5 years.
Wow.
And as a result, they and we won the Counselor and Counseling Client of the Year, the National Award, 2 years ago. So that was very special for them and for us.
Yeah, well, congratulations, and well-deserved. That's an incredible accomplishment. Yeah. So was the Bostic's level of debt typical, or is that, was it unusual? Or is that pretty widespread?
We have seen other amounts of debt that high, but it is a little bit unusual. The average debt that we see at Housing and Credit Counseling is between $20,000 and $30,000 with about 7 different credit cards.
Okay, and how long generally does it take to pay off that debt?
Through a debt management plan, it takes 3 to 5 years. It's a little bit less with medical and collection debt because they require a much higher monthly payment than credit cards might.
Okay, so we know that you help get people out of debt. What else does HCCI do? What's the scope of your programs?
Well, in addition to providing financial counseling for those who are seeking financial stability in their lives through a series of budgeting and counseling programs, we also do mortgage default, or what we call foreclosure prevention counseling, reverse mortgage, and debt management plan like the Bostics. We also do tenant landlord counseling and education. We do home buyer counseling and education.
Okay, Bob, I'm going to slow you down because I want to talk about some of those.
Okay.
All right, let's go back to, people hear a lot about reverse mortgage. First of all, we've seen a lot of foreclosures, so let's talk about foreclosures and reverse mortgage. Can you explain, how do you help people with those processes?
Well, I need to separate the two. Mortgage default is when people come in and they are, typically they have lost a job. If there's a family, maybe one or maybe both have lost jobs, or they have run into significant medical debt. And it's not typically because they've just wasted their money or not managed it properly. So typically it's because of a catastrophic situation. So they are able to come in and talk to a credit counselor. Again, we talk to them about a budget, their expenses, their income, but we can also work with the lender and talk to the lender about, we think we have these people down into a situation where it's a manageable budget. We think we can probably get them back on a payment schedule if you can maybe reduce your interest rate or minimum monthly payments, and oftentimes they do. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to help these people out if they come in on time.
Right.
If they're 3 payments behind or more, that's almost a little bit too late. And we had some people come in with a sheriff's letter saying that they're going to be evicted and there will be a sale in 3 days, and that's just too late. So
well, that's really important to know. So people, if they're 1 or 2 payments behind, there's still time to address that situation.
There is, and we often say, if you think you're going to miss your first payment, you need to come see us.
Yeah, okay.
And they typically know that.
Okay, let's talk about reverse mortgages.
Reverse mortgages, the law changed in October 2005, I believe, and if an individual is contemplating a reverse mortgage, a couple of things. First, they have to be over the age of 62, and they have to have equity in their home. And then what we do is provide counseling to let them know and inform them about the ins and outs of a reverse mortgage, the pros, the cons, the fees, the laws, the guidelines, what can happen if, and so on and so forth. We do not encourage them to take the reverse mortgage. We don't dissuade them from taking the reverse mortgage. All we do is give them information for their own decision. Interesting, when I came to HCCI about 6 years ago, about 30% of the people actually took the reverse mortgage after the counseling session. Now it's about 50 to 60%.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it has a lot to do with people who have retired, and you've read in the paper, as we all have, people are retiring and finding out they don't have enough income, so they're looking at reverse mortgages. They're not for everybody, but if you look at them closely, you go in with your eyes open, it could be a good thing.
Okay. You mentioned landlord-tenant issues. What do you do around those issues?
Well, we teach actually people, tenants and landlords, about their rights and responsibilities based on the Kansas Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. So we're not attorneys, we don't practice law or give legal advice, but there's small things about certain notices and ways to work with your landlord and your neighbors and how to read a lease. Maintenance is the largest problem that people call us about. Sometimes just a written notice to your landlord to repair something makes a world of difference.
Okay, all right. And landlords are willing to work with you?
Yeah,
these issues?
We actually don't mediate. We help each person to help themselves. So we empower, and that's throughout all of our counseling what we do.
I see, okay. The Better Business Bureau has said the most complaints they've heard in 2013, last year, were dealing with the financial services industry, credit card companies, payday loans, and collection agencies. We don't have a lot of time, but can you just talk about what HCCI does around any of those issues that you care to talk about?
The payday loan sticks out because it is, well, you can drive around town and there are more payday loan places and title places than McDonald's. So, and that's everywhere in the country, really. So a lot of people come to us after they have gotten into a situation where they've gone back to the payday loan place more than one time. You know, if it's just one time, they can probably do that, pay it off. But the average person who takes it out a payday loan, it's out for 6 months.
Right.
That's a tremendous amount of interest and payback. So a lot of times we have people come in trying to pay off those loans to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that we deal with.
And you're generally able to help them navigate that.
There's usually several. They don't usually come in with just one payday or title loan. Of course, the title loans are a little more tricky because your car is tied to that. Payday loans, they may have 5 or 6 payday loans at different organizations throughout the city, and they may run around every 2 weeks reloaning those loans, and so all of their paycheck has gone to interest. One way that we find that helps people that not everyone realizes, they could talk to their banker, they could do a stop payment on those checks, and then make a payment plan on the payday loans.
Okay,
So it becomes a bad debt.
Yeah, well, that's good information for people. Is there any other information that people just generally, if they knew this, they may not get into some of the financial problems that they're getting into? Is there some nugget out there that we can leave with people?
It all goes back to budgeting.
Okay.
We don't learn about budgeting in school or necessarily from our parents, most of us. And so the key of saving for non-monthly expenses, knowing about your credit, and everything you do stays with you for 7 years. So it's emergencies and non-monthly expenses. If you can do that and ask questions, be a good consumer, shop around for the best deal. Don't take the first thing that comes your way. That's something to leave with.
All right. Thanks to both of you for being on IGI.
Thank you for having us.